Pishkadale's looking kind of small on this X-ray. I'm not too happy about this.
That's not what it is.
Well, that's good. To the viewing audience, I might lose followers. All right. So now with these lines that you're using here, so there's a skeletal frame, then there's a body mass frame.
Yeah.
So with this grid, what are you actually trying to do right now before we sit down?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we're trying to do is line up everything as symmetrically as possible from left to right so that your arms are equal, your hips are equal and level, which makes your legs equal. So we're going to get the right amount of muscle in the legs. We're going to get a right amount of muscle in the hips and thighs, the correct amount of muscle in the trunk, which is from the neck to the waist, front and back, and then same thing with the right arm versus left arm. Now, because you have so much lean tissue, right, you have so much muscle tissue.
Sure, I like you already.
Yeah. You don't fit in the machine, so we're going to have to mirror that right arm because you're left arm dominant. And then what that means is we'll lose out on average is about 1/3 of a pound of difference between the two.
Okay.
It's when you talk about maybe 170 pounds of lean tissue, maybe more. I don't know what your total weight is.
Right.
1/3 of a pound just really isn't very significant.
Now, when it comes to the total weight, are we gonna end up doing that, or that doesn't get done here?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just going to take a look at total weight also.
All right.
We're going to break it down. Total weight, how much of it is fat, how much of it is lean tissue. We're going to get a score to determine bone density, so bone mineral content.
Right.
And then also we're going to look at visceral fat,
Okay.
which is fat that's around the organs.
Okay. Very good.
All right, that looks pretty good.
All right. So I can't wait to look at the. There you go. X-ray. I love it. All right. So we'll talk in a little bit then.
Yeah. All right. So we do get to compare from what you were here about 2.5 years ago. First thing we're going to look at is body fat percentage. Came in September of 2020, about 25% body fat. Today we're at about 22% body fat. But when we actually look at the composition change, let's see if it's muscle, if it's fat, if it's a little bit of both. So in September, you were 250 pounds. Now you're 240, 10 pounds lighter. You've got 9 pounds less fat tissue and 1 pound less lean tissue. So if you were looking to cut, you did a really, really good job by dropping 10 pounds of fat and only 1 pound of lean tissue. BMC is your bone mineral content. How much of your bone is made of things like calcium, magnesium. We'll use this number to determine bone density, and I'll give you the exact score at the end of the report. Visceral fat over here, that's the fat that's around the organs. Visceral fat is associated with things like heart disease, diabetes, fatty liver, certain types of cancer like colorectal cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. We like to see 1 pound or less. Last time you came in, you were at about 4.25. Now you're at about 2.5. So we are well on our way towards a respectable amount, a healthy amount. Right? Still a little bit high. Still want to get down to 1 pound or less, but definitely headed in the right direction. All right. Now, we do get to break down the lean tissue from left to right. We've got about 14 pounds of lean tissue in that right arm. Like I said, because you're too big, got too much muscle, you don't fit on the machine.
Yeah.
So we mirror that left arm to the right arm. Most likely, on average, we see about 1/3 of a pound of difference. So just assume it's somewhere in that range. 31.1 pounds of lean tissue in that right leg. That's a lot of lean tissue. With anyone who's around 6 feet tall, I like to see 25 pounds or more. So above 30 is awesome. Left leg, slightly smaller at 29.8 pounds. Now you got about a 1.3 pound difference between the two legs. If you want to do some isolation work, right? So let's say you're doing legs that day, you can do lunges and split squats. Do 1 extra set on that left leg. Just give it a little bit of extra stimulus, right? Even them out. If you feel like, hey, both my legs have a ton of muscle, they're really strong, I don't have any problems with like my knees or my hips or my ankles, don't worry about it. Okay? Whole right side of the body, about 89 pounds of lean tissue. Whole left side of the body, 90 pounds of lean tissue, which just leaves one area that we didn't talk about, which is from the trunk, neck to the waist, front and back. When we look at the right side of the trunk, you've got 38.5 pounds of lean tissue. On the left side of the trunk, you've got 42.2, so you've got almost 4 pounds of extra tissue on the left side of the trunk. It's actually very, very common for, it's like a common compensation pattern that we see. You're left-handed, you're very left side dominant, kind of all the way throughout. It's totally okay. But like I said, if you're always getting pain in the mid back, you see that that right mid trap is underdeveloped, strengthen it, right? Kind of common sense over there. Bone mineral content, that's bone density. We're going to ignore it for now because we're just going to talk about your T-score at the end, right? Lean tissue we've talked about, fat in pounds. I'm not interested in past what's the total, about 53 pounds, and how much of it is visceral, which is about 2.4 pounds, okay? After that, I really like to focus my attention on body fat percentage because how you store your fat is also very important, right? You see how your arms are at 17%, super lean, right? Your total is 22, so it's about 5 points lower. And then we take a look at the legs, also right around 17%, very lean. Very, very normal for men. We don't store a lot of fat in our arms and legs. We tend to store more from here to here. That being said, it shouldn't be a lot more. It should be evenly distributed for the most part, right? When we look at your trunk, which is the neck to the waist, you're at 27% body fat, which is about 5 points above the overall. Zoom in on the trunk with just at the belly. That's the android region. We're at 31, which is about 9 points higher than the overall. So the first thing I think when I see that is diet and exercise. I know exercise isn't the problem, so most likely cleaner diet, okay? That'll help us storing a little bit more fat in the trunk, all right? We look at the gynoid region. That's the hips and thighs, back down to 19%. Very, very normal for men. We don't store a lot of fat in our hips and thighs. We tend to store more in the trunk. Women tend to be the opposite, okay? Now, the reason I bring up belly fat and fat in the hips and thighs is because the ratio of belly fat to fat in the hips and thighs is associated with things like heart disease and diabetes. Now, with high numbers here and high numbers here, it doesn't mean you have any of these diseases, but you are at a greater risk to develop them, right? Last time you came in, your ratio was at 1.9, and we like to see somewhere between about 0.6 and 1. And this time, we're lower at 1.6, but still above what I'd like to see. That's because super lean in the hips and thighs, under 20%, and then about 30% in the belly.
Great.
Now that being said, you're definitely on the right track. You're down 2 pounds of fat in the belly, and it's all visceral fat, which is the worst kind of fat you can have up there.
Okay.
Right? This is you.
Looking like a Sasquatch. I like
a
it.
monster. That green is muscle tissue, and the red is fat tissue.
For all those people out there, I always talk about people with no calves. As you can see, this is a deep dive into anatomical calves. You know,
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, aside from this region right here, very, very little fat in the body, just mostly being stored from here. All right.
When you look, obviously you do this quite often. When you look at the skeletal frame,
yeah.
Like where does my skeletal frame, like just like as an eyeball, like how does it look? Is obviously we're all, you know, this biodiversity, we're all quite different. So what do you see? Anything pop out at you or?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was just about to get there.
Thank you,
so very, very good bone density.
Okay.
Right? So 0, just take a look right here. 0 is
All right.
completely average. That's the 50th percentile. You're at 2.2, meaning you are all the way over here.
Okay.
Now, when we talk about bone density, the name of the game is not being in the yellow or red. That's osteopenia, that's osteoporosis. The further we are in the green, the
Right.
better.
Awesome.
And you're pretty far over in the green. Now, the best thing you can do for bone density is to lift heavy weights and eat enough protein. After that, you want to take your supplements, vitamin D, calcium, magnesium, all those other things. Great. If you're not lifting heavy weights, you're not eating enough protein, you're not doing what you need to.
Okay.
And it's not like heavy bicep curls. It's really about picking weights up off the ground and having them push you to the ground. So squats, deadlifts, farmer's carries, that kind of thing. All right. All right. This last page, we get to kind of compare where you were 2.5 years ago, which is where you are today. I don't love doing a comparison over such a long period of time. So much can change. You have injuries. You told me about. You can gain a lot, lose a lot, and go back and forth a few times. So this is going to be a lot more telling next time you come in a couple months. But let's take a look for now. So down 1% body fat in the arms. All right. Down 0.2% in the legs. There was very, very little change in the legs. That's pretty much nothing. In the trunk, there was a big difference though. You're down 5.3%. And in the belly, you're down 7%. Hips and thighs, down 0.5%. And overall, down just about 3%. Now the good thing here, the really good news is, you didn't get much change in the arms, legs, hips, and thighs because you were already super lean, had so much muscle tissue. Where you changed was where you stored the most fat, which is good. That means your body's responding appropriately. All right. A little bit of a recap. You're at 240 pounds. You got 53 pounds of fat tissue, and just about 179 pounds of lean tissue. Now, for somebody who's around 6 feet tall, a good amount of lean tissue, somewhere around 145, 150 pounds of lean tissue. So you're well above average. All right.
That's what the girls come. Good.
it.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Well, what's your name again? So the viewing audience could
Yeah, no problem.
come
Dan.
see.
Yeah.
What is it?
Dan.
All right, Dan. Thanks for your time and thanks for the explanation.
My pleasure.
All right.